forgive me, I will call a game guru. I do love them quite a bit. My name is Rich Durham, and when Georgia says this is a highly interactive, what I do mean specifically by that is that you have the complete freedom to interact during this webinar. By unmuting yourself using the icons over on the right and asking a question at any time, feel free to interrupt me. There are points, particularly in this webinar, where I'm looking for some of that interaction, and it'll be painfully obvious when that is. Otherwise, if you don't want to interrupt, feel free to ask the question on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a little question tab in the GoToMeeting thing, and Georgia will help us out and make sure that I answer most of those. Okay. So starting off, what you'll see here is on the screen a picture of Electro City. This is a game made by Genesis Energy, and it is a really clever little game. Some of you may be familiar with it. And in this game, you control a little plot of land where you develop it however you see fit, and you can increase the population, you can increase the tax rates, you can increase the amount of energy you're supplying using different methods like solar, nuclear, wind, and coal, or gas. Now, this is the epitome of exploratory and experiential play. And play is what we're going to be getting at a lot today, because play and games are how we learn from childhood. And this is something that we learn to forget. And neoteny is the word that means that when you retain childlike behaviors, and the most influential one you can have in the present day is this idea of creativity and play that you retain, right? Other things that you are a child you may not want, but neoteny in terms of creativity is one of the more important skills of the modern day. So Electro City, just to get back into that, asks you to look at yourself and score yourself on these 4 criteria that you have complete control over, whether you're supplying with enough power, your popularity with the people, how nice is your environment still, because the people in these towns still care about that, and it rates you on these things. And as you experiment and play, you get to see how your scores are changed by each of these. It doesn't necessarily tell you outright, but it's a pretty clear relationship. And you get a few very clear tools to do this with. For instance, if you look at this screen, you'll notice that the mouse is selecting a little square, and on the right side, you see that you have a couple options. You can log the forest, which costs $0, or you can prospect, which will allow you to see if there's oil or gas in there, and you can then use that to get more power out of the land. You can also do things like make the land into a campground or build a village. It's completely up to you. It's not telling you that there is a right answer. It is allowing you to explore. And anytime you make these choices, it's going to toggle the things that you'll see over on the left side, like your population or how much money you're getting. For instance, if you log the forest, it doesn't cost you anything, but it produces green land that you can use later for things that make money. You can change the tax rates and things too, and that's going to, of course, affect your popularity, which are represented by those smiley faces, right? So what it's doing is it's giving you immediate feedback, and this is a good thing. Feedback, of course, a lot of us are learning professionals here, and so we know that feedback is going to be something that the learners are going to be using to guide how they make choices in the future. Right? So this example, which I'm dumping us right into the middle of, is getting to the heart of the matter of this webinar, which is that creativity, which is that neoteny type of thing that I was talking about, is fundamental to living in the conceptual age. This is the age of technology, of the digital age, where information is everywhere. The highest valued skills these days are the ability to solve problems. Right? So creativity is something that we want learners to have in almost every role, particularly skilled roles. So how do we foster it? How do we allow people to break out of the idea of being told what to do and instead tell them how they have the ability to learn on their own? Right? So today's webinar is about learning to foster that atmosphere of creativity and further learning using play, right, and the idea of play. Because playful learning it can be fun, and that is a loaded word in its own right. What fun is, there's a lot of different ways, but by fun we simply mean that it can be engaging. It can be exploratory, it can be narrow. So fun, there's a lot of types of fun. Very serious fun is a term that's thrown around in games quite a bit. You don't have to be laughing to have fun. Fun doesn't necessarily mean silly, but it does mean engaging. Right? So it could be exploratory, it can be done together, not always alone. This type of learning is modern learning. This is playful learning. This is the way that hopefully things can go where people are in control of their own learning. Now, we're going to have a bit of an agenda here. We're going to start off talking about purpose is to do creativity. That's what we want to cover. I cannot stress it enough that in the future and going forwards, if you want your learners to stay connected, to stay lifelong learners, you need to make sure that they feel they're expressing themselves, they've got a personal connection to it, to learning content, and that they are not just getting content they feel they can use in their role, because then they're just going to use it and then leave it, but that they can add to it and they can share it, their expertise amongst other people. Right, so we're going to look at a couple examples, and then I'm going to go into experimentation itself, how something that's helpful for creativity, and then exploring and engagement, what those mean in plays, and some examples in each of those realms, and how you can use them in your own learning. Right. So the first analogy that I'd like to make is that learning is like cartography, but of course of the mind. It's going to show us where we can go. When you know something, it should just open up further questions. The quest for knowledge, these classic kind of tropes of when you learn things, you can only learn what you don't know. Right? You only learn how little you knew before. This goes back all the way when people are young children and they go to university for the first time and they realize how much more there was in the world and how they feel dumber after going to university, at least they hopefully do, because they realize that there's so much more information out there. And they can then explore that information on their own drive. So when learning is like cartography, knowing that there's a big sea, a big ocean out there is one thing, but forming communities of explorers and sharing that knowledge and getting excited about particular paths of that knowledge helps us map it and how it relates to things that we already do know, and it allows us to put frameworks around it. So what we're doing with digital communities these days is we can use that sea of information that is out there and construct mental maps that allow us to explore even more. And digital communities are a new way of encouraging learners to seek out their own information. And I'm sure a lot of you have had experience with this on your own if you've ever been on Wikipedia and ever clicked a link and then clicked another link and then another link and another link, and you just keep reading and reading. That idea harnessed into learning for purpose is what we're looking at today. All right, so learners are building their own maps. So here's our loose map that we're going to be looking at today, is the relationship between these three things. Play, which is a kind of a process that you use to engage people, and then creativity, hopefully being the outcome of that, and not just creativity, but problem solving, so that people learn how to seek out their own answers, because it's not so much, and then this goes back to something I'll talk about later. One of those skills that a lot of employers look for in their employees is the ability to correct mistakes that they have. And they do this because they seek out answers and they can solve problems. This makes it an incredibly valuable skill. So learning with this outcome is hand in hand with creativity, the skill. And they are one and the same. So what we're going to look at here is this. This is a game. This is the McDonald's Till Challenge made by Kineo UK. This is an award-winning game that taught people specifically how to operate a till. The experience that they would have is one of time pressure. And we'll see if we can get this to run for us right now. Shout out anybody if you can't see the till game loading. or if in a minute you don't hear anything. All right. So this is a game describing how we play right now. Simple, just if you were running a till. And a customer comes up, asks me, hey, how do I want to respond? I, of course, want to be a polite person, so I'm going to say, hello, how can I help you? Now the game is really going to start.
Morning. Let's see. I think I'll have a bacon and egg bagel today. And can I also order an egg McMuffin?
So what we see here is I've got a time limit right here, this clock which is going. I hopefully can find the right button. Breakfast. I want a bacon McMuffin. Oh, wrong choice. Okay, this is just going to cost me more time. The longer I take, of course, the more angry this customer is going to get, and he's going to leave. Egg muffin. No, I got to do it in the right order. Bacon and egg bagel. There it is, and an egg muffin.
Oh, I almost forgot. Can I also have 2 teas with that?
Yes, 2 teas. Somewhere. Hot drinks. 2 teas. Phew. All right. So this keeps going. It goes faster. You run out of time. You can see that there's a satisfaction meter. And all of these things I have to manage all at once. There's a system in play here.
I'm having this order to take away. £10 should cover the cost, right?
All right. And now the system changes a bit. I've got to type in my cost, and I'm going to just fail at this. I don't know what's going on. I might do it wrong. Notice that I'm keep giving more and more chances to kind of explore the system on my own to figure out how to use it a little bit. Let me just fail at that, close that. So the point of this Microsoft Till game is to specifically train people on how to use the till. You can be used as a way to see if they've got skills ahead of time. They get to practice it. It's a very particular common type of gamification that you see a lot, and I am going to go out of the way and assume that a lot of people know the term gamification and are familiar with it or interested in it at all already. And I want to say right now that gamification as like this is not necessarily the focus of what I want to talk about today. And I bring this up to contrast that this game, while it does have some exploratory elements to it where I'm exploring the system and I am learning the system, is a different type of fun. This is a very kind of a challenge-based fun where you can get better at it. And when you get better at it, you're better at a particular skill. And that's gamification is quite good at that. It can show me my reward level down at the bottom left-hand corner there, you'll see. So this type of game is up training, it's skill training. And it encourages people through typical gamification techniques, but it isn't the overall package for creativity. That's a different type of play. And those types of games may not be recognizable as games that you might be familiar with. So let's take a look at some of them. Right. This is a website which it's called Genius. It started as Rap Genius, where people would be able to enter lyrics to rap songs and then annotate them. Right. In this particular case, hopefully you'll be able to see in a second a speech by John Cleese, comedian, on creativity. Just like rap lyrics, texts from speeches and the like can be scripted out, and the audio is available up at the top. Genius.com has kind of branched out away from just lyrics and into the idea of annotating the internet. Now, this is a pretty simple concept, but how is it play exactly? Well, when you allow people to dig in information or something they're already interested in, for instance, I can click on this link here. Someone connected this picture to this quote, and they annotated, they added it in, and they got points for doing so. Now, this sounds more like gamification. So here we're looking at a thing where I am taking a text and I am collectively adding more information to it, enriching it, and getting rewarded for doing so in a gamification sense, not only through points, but through social status. And this is shared with other people. This is classic, kind of a blended learning approach, but done with the points, it instantly becomes gamification. This element, though, is more broadly play. because you can enter things in which seem a little more irreverent, if you wish, and the community kind of judges based on this. For instance, I'm seeing some propaganda here and it just shows a picture. We don't understand it, right? Giving people the freedom to enter annotations as they wish allows them to just kind of experiment, have a bit of fun with it, true, kind of the laugh fun, but also allows them to self-moderate with downvotes and the like. So this is like a very risk-free environment for them to explore in. Right? So go back. Right. So when you get to an annotation like this, you get that Wikipedia effect that I mentioned, that ability to deep dive onto information. So you can click on an annotation and you can see where it takes you because there'll be a link within that of did you know types of quality, and that allows people to explore what interests them. But it's still all related, or at least it starts that way, related to the core content that they had. And very likely by diving deeply like they do, they're able to relate it back to what they knew already. So there's some classic gamification techniques on this, of course. There's leaderboards that allow you to get points, who gets the most points for good annotations and that upvoted on things. These allow you to unlock some status that allow you to post on a forum. You can't post until you get to a certain level. And it also gives you some titles that give you some social prestige. All of these are pretty classic gamification techniques, like badges and leaderboards. But when used in conjunction with sharing and discussing things, it becomes a very powerful mode of play, even without some of those gamification techniques to encourage the actual process of annotating. That's that single skill. People would still do it. There's no points in Wikipedia editors, but there's thousands of people who edit Wikipedia, and they do it because they get social status, kind of an informal social status, but they also just like the process of sharing that information and feeling like experts. And just by codifying it with gamification, you can allow it to be a little more gamified. Right? So how can we apply lessons from this particular thing to learning that we've done or learning that we have seen, and particularly sharing explorations of information, gamifying particular behaviors like making annotations, and engaging with content by allowing them to change it or edit it. And I'm asking now, these are the types of screens that I'll say. This is where I'm looking for input from you all, because assuming that you guys are all learning professionals of some kind, or HR, or gamification experts yourself. I'm sure there's a lot of really good examples out there that you've seen or played with, people modifying content or just playing with it and sharing ideas. So let's take a second, pause to let you guys think about it, throw it up into the chat, raise your hand, ask the question, or just unmute yourself and give a share. Okay. Georgia, am I missing anybody?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. We have Adrian who said super better is an example. I'm not sure what that is. Adrian, are you on the line so you can explain what super better is?
Adrian may need to unmute himself.
There we go. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. So super better is, I guess it's through an online method of behaviour improvement. I think it's run by someone in the US. I can't remember her name.
Jane McGonigal.
That's it, yes.
Yep.
It's about setting goals for yourself to improve. I think she started it out because she had an injury and she wanted to get better faster, and she thought with some sort of gamification element that would prove herself to be engaged in the recovery a lot better.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. That's a really good example of gamifying life, you might say.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's quite good. To expound a bit on that, the gamifying that they use in Super Better is all about taking small steps and getting rewards for those steps. For instance, if you need to feel like you need to work out more, and who doesn't, it says start with little things like you just take 10 steps, and then you'll get a little prize for doing that, and you gain experience points for doing those 10 steps. Or it'll stop you and say do 30 jumping jacks right now, and you can do that, and you get some more points, and it'll rate you on that. But there's a huge sharing component alongside that. Yes, thank you for the link there, Adrian. I see it in the questions. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very good, great gamifying particular behaviors example. Yeah. Does anybody else have any examples sharing of content or ideas with each other?
A lot of people are mentioning Reddit on the questions panel.
Yeah, Reddit. Reddit's a good example.
I see Mia's brought it up a couple times. Mia?
Yeah, it's a good example of how it can go very wrong as well, but also also very right in terms of how it approaches the idea of upvoting and downvoting information, or at least posts, right? Because it's very loose. And it just says here, post things. You've got topics, but post them, and you can get upvotes and downvotes. Which really interesting about Reddit is the kind of behaviors that are actually rewarded with the gamification. You find a lot of people that reward both helpful comments, depending on the Reddit thread, and also just ones that they find really funny. There's no difference between the upvotes for those types of things. And that's always something that you need to be aware of when you're designing a system for gamifying particular behaviors, is what is the behavior that's actually going to be rewarded when you use it. Because if you just get a bunch of irreverent people just posting things that are distracting from the point of the behavior that you're trying to get, it can be disruptive, to say the least. Yeah, so Reddit's good.
We also have another one from Karen, who I'm just trying to unmute right now. Which she mentioned people can share ideas through her work-based platform, Jive. Karen, are you there? Hopefully she can share some ideas on what they do. Karen?
Hi, Karen.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so we have our sort of social learning platform, Jive, that allows people to post their own content rather than it being sort of work in post content, and that encourages people to engage in communities and share ideas and develop understanding. That's probably the way I see this being applied in our workplace. But it's really hard to get people involved and participating and contributing. But it's not,
right.
it's not gamification.
There's no gamification, did you say?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, it's certainly helpful. Genius, it's worked quite well for them to do things like that. Yeah, and I see a comment on there that says, "Haven't heard of Genius. Looks really interesting." Oh, that was yours. Yeah. Yeah, it is quite good for doing so. And in fact, Genius, if you dig a bit, you'll find that they've opened it up for everybody to use. You sign up for the beta, and you can use the annotation on any web page at all. And they've got a widget they can use so you can actually make those annotations appear on your page in your own server as well. But that's down the line, I'm sure, because it's in beta. But at the moment, yes, you can just paste links in there and see how that works. Just kind of play around with it yourselves, because you get some ideas about how you can incorporate kind of gamification into your social sharing. Yeah.
We have one more comment from Sarah Louise, who mentioned Adobe and how they do a great gamification e-learning on how to use Illustrator. I don't think I've actually seen that one. Have you seen that one, Richard?
I haven't, no.
Sarah, are you there?
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. Yeah, hi. We were just looking at some options the other day and doing a lot of research, and we found we came across, we do a lot of design work, so we use Illustrator and Photoshop quite a bit, and we came across one. It's through the Adobe forums, and it's actually learning how to use the pen tool by using like a Space Invader type of character, and you draw lines and curves and stuff, and it teaches you how to trace and curve lines and whatnot, and you move up through the ranks. And I'm pretty sure that you can share it as you go as well, and share it inside the forums. It was really cool stuff. I haven't seen anything like it before, and I've showed a couple of people who have said they really liked it as well.
Very cool. Now, Sarah, when you say share it, are you sharing your like a playthrough of what you did, or results, or what shared?
I can't remember because it was a couple of weeks ago that I actually did it. But I think you can share your results through like forums and get like tips and hints and stuff like that. I might be incorrect in saying that, but I'm pretty sure you could, because I only went through to the first 3 levels because, to be honest, I didn't have time and it was really addictive. But it was obviously good gamification because I just wanted to keep doing it, even though I knew how to do the stuff in there. I just wanted to keep playing it, so it was really, really engaging. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there was some way of being able to share that content.
Oh, fantastic. Particularly the tips. I like that you're saying that they do that, where you can give people advice and share your expertise on how to play. Yeah, that's crucial to using it in learning, right? It's, of course, we can share that expertise with each other.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for that example. That's a good one. I'll have to look that up myself. Yeah. All right, I think we'll move on now. Thank you for everybody for sharing your examples. Of course, there's tons and tons out there. It's just a matter of stumbling upon them and sharing them with each other. Right? So moving on to another example. Here, very quick, this one's called the Wiki Game. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the Wiki Game is a kind of a literal example of the deep diving in Wikipedia. Your goal in the Wiki Game, and you can play this online yourselves, is it gives you, there's a few variations, but it gives you a few terms, and your goal is to navigate from one Wikipedia page to the other, just using the links that are within the wiki pages themselves. So trying to get from Nelson Mandela to hamburger is a bit difficult, and you can try to do it within a certain amount of clicks, as you can see over here on the right with the results, or you race, or you try to do it within a time limit. And there's a few other variations as well. Now this is a gamification, again, of a very specific behavior of use a skill that you probably already have, which is navigating Wikipedia, and then just practice it and do it as quickly as you possibly can. It's not sharing information with each other. It's not sharing knowledge with each other. It's straight using that gamification for behavior. But that behavior is capitalizing on people who have already explored a lot of Wikipedia, and they're used to the kinds of links and the system that Wikipedia has set up. So this is another example of how you can use literal gamification, with badges and leaderboards and that kind of thing, to have the experts compete against each other using a complicated skill that they may have already picked up. Right? So it's not for training so much as for using skills and kind of reflecting their skill already that they may already have. Right? So as an assessment, you might say. So again, you get some social media sharing, which isn't tips necessarily as much as it is bragging rights and leaderboards. But there isn't a lot of depth to it, right? There's not a lot of learning potential to it because you've got such a time limit. So using it as a tool in its own right to teach people how to navigate Wikipedia, maybe not so great. But it is a good assessment tool for people who are already experts at it, perhaps. So I'm going to skip this over a little bit. How do we apply these lessons? Because this is more classic gamification, and I want to gloss over that a little bit more and get back into how do we use this type of systems, the play systems, to give us creativity. So let's go into experimentation. And a quick quote here about experimentation is that purposeful play through experimentation can be exciting and rewarding and stimulates creativity. And that should be an obvious statement, but I had a professor here who said it, so it makes it very legitimate, right? So purposeful play, meaning that you have a system that you are, or a goal that you are experimenting with. And when you do so, you kind of stretch the boundaries of what that system can provide or what ways you can get to a goal. Right? And that's what allows you to get creative with it. So experimenting can lead to discoveries that you wouldn't have known before. So GE has an appliance division, and of course we don't think of appliances as a very particularly sexy thing or a particularly creative thing, but here they are. This is an unrelated picture because they could not find, unsurprisingly, pictures of the GE appliance division, but these guys are engaging in the same practice, which is they were creating a machine, very mousetrap board game-like machine here, to do a simple task, and they had to do this task in a Rube Goldberg style. So in the GE, what they would do is they would hold these work sessions where they would use materials, found materials, really, and they would try to use them in new ways, and they had a goal at this to build a particular type of sculpture. And by using materials in different ways, as on these teams, they were able to ask, well, what if we just partially melt it? Can we bond it to wood and things like that? And it allows them to find new avenues, right? And it shouldn't be any big discovery moment of our own right now to simply say that, of course, experimenting can lead to discoveries and asking that question of what if. However, applying it to e-learning and experimenting with an e-learning is something that isn't done enough. Right? So how can we do this? How can we take the idea of experimenting and apply it to e-learnings? Well, first, what is the approach? Okay, the approach that they used at GE and the approach that we can kind of take out and use in e-learning is this, the sandbox approach, right? You use your hands before our eyes and minds. So when they were looking at materials, they were saying, well, we hold these materials. We should, instead of applying theory and diagrams and plotting it out, we should just kind of hold them, because that's the end state of the material anyways, being held and it's physical. So when we're looking at learning, we can do the same thing. Always approach the learning from the learner's point of view first, saying, all right, I'm sitting at a computer and I'm about to engage in this learning. What's it going to be? What are my possibilities? And this is where you can start asking questions about, they're probably connected to the internet. Are they connected? What can we do now with the internet? Oh, well, we can have them using their Facebook profiles, some real social boundaries, and we can bring in outside things, right? So pushing the boundaries of what is typical or accepted is, other than just an inspirational poster, is also should be a mantra when you're looking at designing these things, of saying, well, let's just allow the learner to try things that aren't normally tried when they're trying to learn systems. And suspending the pressures of the design process. This is an important part. When the GE people were doing it, this was a free-form afternoon work session. And a lot of learners are learning things to high stakes, where they need to pass an assessment, and if they don't pass the assessment, they don't get a qualification, and if they don't get the qualification, they can no longer do their jobs. So allowing people to experiment requires a safe space. It allows them to be able to play without fear of failure, because you will fail, and you need to fail faster. You need to rapidly prototype, which means you're going to fail very quickly. But the quicker you can get things to real form, you can test it. So that's something they would do at GE, is just build it and see if it works, and then see where that goes. So this approach, this design approach, is something that graphic designers use, system designers use it quite a bit. It's experimenting and playing a lot. And this is this is the Squiggle by Damian Newman there. It's actually a design. You can buy T-shirts with this on there. The Squiggle shows how typically you'll get a lot of research and ideas go every which way. You start with blue sky thinking, and then eventually you narrow it down and use the constraints of your project, and then eventually you build a prototype stage, and by then it kind of is ironed out into, it's got a clear goal, and the approach is clear, and you get your design at the very, very end. And that's good. Now we can alter this a bit like this. And this is my hand-drawn squiggle too, so this is not as nice as squiggle, all things. But if you prototype faster, you can kind of change the curve a bit, and prototype will give you a direction so that your squiggle now is going in a particular way, and you prototype and you can find where you're going a little bit faster because you can rule out what doesn't work a bit better. All that blue sky thinking and getting tangled up potentially in concepts can go away. Now this happens when, I know when we design complicated learning programs as well, we go through the same design process. So the question is, why aren't we letting learners do this? We're kind of just telling them things, but we learn a lot when we're developing learning. So why do we not allow them to do it? Partially it's time pressure, I understand. And that time pressure means that everything is high stakes for those learners. What we need to do is see if we can find ways to allow these learners to kind of push back against time pressure, I should say, and allow them to say, hey, these learners, if we want them to be creative, got to give them time. You want them to be able to solve problems. You've got to be able to teach them to solve problems. You can't tell them. You've got to allow them to do it. So allow them to go through the design process. You facilitate the design process the same way that we as designers go through the design process. So allow them to make decisions and see their consequences. Right? Allow them to reflect. You'll notice that a lot of these words sound like typical learning outcomes. You give them time to reflect. You give them time to adjust their approach and repeat. That's what you do with a prototype. And then they reach a desired state finally, and they can communicate that learning, share it with others so that they can talk about how they were an expert. Right? This process is what we aim for, and it should look right? But this isn't typically what we see a lot of learning do unless that learning is highly interactive and open-ended, right? Allowing them to make these decisions in safe spaces. So what I'm doing is encouraging you to do that. Go out and do it. Right? Because these are the skills that people want to see. These are the top 3 that I pulled from the survey from Careers New Zealand of a bunch of employers where they want people to be able to work in teams, sharing information, working collegially, communicating with people inside and outside the organization. And the big one, the biggest skill other than communicating, was making decisions and solving problems. So in any role, this is as a soft skill, right? Could be taught alongside whatever content it is by engaging them in content using the design process. By using experimentation as the process through which they explore the content, they are learning this skill at the same time. And at the same time, they'll also be engaged in it more because they're allowed to experiment it. And yes, that is Vince Vaughn and James Franco. All right, so another learning example of an interactive simulation. This from physics department in Colorado University. A little background, I used to be a science teacher for many years, and we would use these things liberally throughout the school year to allow students to just interact with systems that we couldn't necessarily have on hand, depending on the school district, and it'll see how things work. So this particular one allows them to simply dump a bunch of stuff into this water, change the evaporation rate, which is weird because we don't really do that in nature unless we're heating it up, basically. Let me restart this. And test what the concentration is. So first let me just fill up some water. Notice that I've got simple interactions. I'm just playing around with it. Add some of my drink mix. Shake, 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 shake. Right? Everything is very simple interaction. And then I can examine my concentration. And then I can see how it changes by doing things such as draining said water. Right? Nothing there. Okay, didn't change my concentration. What if I add, well, change my concentration. Right? So finding relationships between things, I can learn just by kind of experimenting with the system. Right? And that's kind of the point that I'm getting at. Is that, what if I remove water by evaporating it? Well, concentration is going up. Why is that? And this leads to more questions. And that adds to that map that I was saying that learning is, when they find knowledge and then it makes them ask questions about why. And if they're experimenting with it and doing it themselves, it's now personal. So they're more likely to ask the question, why, and try to find out the answer because they are the ones who brought the question up in the first place. So, Other experimentation, this is used for coding, of course. There's a lot of web programs these days where you can learn coding, and it asks you to learn that coding by programming tanks or exploring environments and the like. That's a long video, so I won't play it for you today, but you can check it out at robomind.com. And there's tons of other coding and learning things out there where you're testing code and experimenting with code and seeing the exact results of that code. And you have design goals when you're doing it, a lot like the design process. But you're allowed to explore and experiment. Here's a quick Kineo example. There's a recent project for HPA where people would, this is for bar staff, so at this point you were playing the role of somebody serving drinks at a bar, and these customers are coming up and they're acting, and they're real actors, and you need to determine whether you serve them or ask for ID, and then every choice you make leads to another set of choices. Now, a lot of us who are learning professionals will think, oh, it's a branching scenario. Yeah, you're right, it is just a branching scenario, but in a branching scenario like this where there's multiple endings, instead of just a single ending, and that is crucial to this branching scenario. It encourages people to kind of explore or experiment with the different types of options that you can do. And part of it's just to see the silly acting or the good acting and just say, hey, I want to see what video clip happens if I did serve them and they were underage. You know, what might happen? And that's what can keep you going sometimes if it's just to see the video, but experimenting by trying different options, right? Cool. So, a quick question. I want to spend about 3 or 4 minutes if we have a few examples that you guys may have seen experimentation used in learning in the past. Just throw it up there on the questions, and Eagle Eye Georgia will hopefully let me know when she sees it.
I think everyone's just busy typing right now. Any examples? Andrea on the question panel, though, I think was chatting during some of your previous slides. Let me just unmute Andrea if you want to talk through some of these points that you mentioned. Here you mentioned allow the learner to safely fail during the course and don't allow them to turn off the brain. Give them a goal to achieve, that is gamification. Andrea, are you there?
Points. Yes.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Andrea.
Good. I have no microphone. Just
no.
Oh, but we can hear you.
Computer.
We can hear you though.
Andrew, thank you for those power statements that you've supplied there in the questions. They're quite good.
I think we shouldn't use points for gamification, but to help the learner make useful decisions. It's something that you see that we had before. Use creativity and let them safely fail in this direction.
Yes, I completely agree. Electro City I think was a good example of that, because the points you get are on different scales, so you really need to maintain a balance. So it guides you, as you're saying, to make decisions, but not to say how well you did necessarily. Yeah.
Exactly, because the points are not the goal. The game is the goal, or achieve something is the goal. And in this case, it's something different for everybody else. I just got in that Electro City, just small villages, and I was happy too. Never got for the whole city.
That's very true. In fact, in the learning for that, for the description of how to play, they say some people want to build sprawling metropolises, some people like to build peaceful campgrounds, and that's fine. It's all good. There's no single goal. You're very right. Very good points, Andrea. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Andrea. Sarah Louise has mentioned that she's seen some great stuff from Unit 9 of the NHS Lifesaver program. Sarah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen it or are familiar with it, but they're a UK-based company, and one of my managers here showed it to me a while back, and it's all video based, but it's video interaction, and so you're performing first aid and it's branching, so if you do the wrong thing then there are consequences and people can die, I guess, but you've got a time response to respond to it and you have to make a decision. So it's basically everything you've been talking about rolled into one. It's absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of work in it, but yeah, it's that whole make that decision. You've got that time, so it's real life kind of response time as well, because you know that's what they're trying to get you to achieve. Yeah, so that's a perfect example, I think, to sum up what you've been talking about.
Yeah, I know. I am familiar with the one you're talking about. Yeah, full video and somebody collapses in like a tunnel and.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
One where someone's choking and yeah.
Yeah, it's quite exciting. That's what I like about that the most.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of, I think, specific gamification for behaviors, because you can experiment and see how horrible deaths everybody experiences, sadly.
Which is horrible.
Yeah, it is horrible, but it is going to draw people into seeing, oh, what are the possible different endings that happen? Let me go back and try again. And it's doing it because it's, as you said, it's just so well made with video that it draws people to it. Now, what it doesn't do too much is it kind of usually it stops after that one wrong choice, if I remember, and says, oh, no, you're wrong, and somebody died. So your experimentation ends very quickly. So as a game that really draws you in with all of its other features, fantastic. But for experiencing it, it's quite good. But for exploring maybe in a gruesome kind of way.
Yeah, I think it gets your heart rate up because you want to keep them alive and stuff. But yeah, that it doesn't dive a little bit deeper. But I think what they've done with it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, quite a. Thank you for the sharing. And as I said, we only spent a few minutes, so we'll have to move on now. So if you had any other examples, post them up in the questions with links if you've got them, so people can take a look. Share that expertise you guys have. And let's move on a bit here. So exploration, we've been talking about it a little bit. It's really related to experimentation, isn't it? Except instead of just playing within a single system, you're exploring maybe a little bit more outside of it as well. So a quick inspirational quote from T.S. Eliot about exploration, and this kind of sums up the idea of it, is that we shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all our exploring, we will be able to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Now, this may be taken out of context from the little getting a bit, but the idea that I want to get across with it is that when you leave home, so to speak, and you explore the world, you come back to something that you thought you knew and see it again with fresh eyes. Your perspective has changed. So exploring allows people to expand what they feel about information they already know. And there's a lot of feelings that can come around when you are exploring and that encourage further exploration that are a little different than just experimentation. Here you get creativity and fantasy and awe, surprise when you find something you weren't expecting, a sense of wonder when you're wandering around. You point at a map and you just say, I wonder what is out there, and you just decide to go, right, as opposed to being told what's out there. Right? So here's a classic example that children of the 80s will recognize. This is Legend of Zelda. And it is strictly a game, but it rewarded discovery and curiosity using very simple tools, and that's why I want to use it as an example for exploration, because you were simply given a tool at the beginning of the game with a sword, and then just as they just go on, go forth, and you were given some simple choices about where to go, just up, left, or right, and you wander. And as you wandered, you would discover things. I mean, yes, you'd discover some simple challenges along the way in terms of the little hopping monster there, but you'd also discover dungeons like this one, which you would enter, and it would surprise you when you went in. It was change the environment, and by conquering it using the tool that you had, you were able to expand your available world because you would get a new tool. Like a flute, or you'd be able to get a raft or something that allowed you to cross water, and now all new areas are open to you. Now, we can draw some parallels with this, with exploring in content, and there are some very literal examples where exploring content and it just unlocks the next section, and then you complete that and unlocks the next section. And that's not at all what I'm talking about with exploring, because that's just a linear progression with walls in your way. And I mean something more like this. It's completely open, and it's more than just a menu that's open for you to explore the order of your content, because there's new nuggets to discover everywhere in here. And you use the tools that you find in some places to interact with the things that you find. So you may do it out of order, but the order isn't important here beyond a certain measure. For instance, you may have to do a few of these dungeons in the right order, but you're completely open in between that zone. And the idea of exploring, wow, what's under that hedge? Oh, I can burn hedges with a candle. Maybe I should do that more, and I discover something, and it's rewarded, almost like a slot machine, right? And you find some treasure underneath, right? And so by rewarding that curiosity, you encourage people to keep doing it, and it's doing it in a very gamified sense. In a way that's not gamified, you have exploration that can come with toys like Lego. And this goes back to that neoteny, that idea of the childlike play. What are we doing? Well, in this case, your endless possibilities. You can explore, you can build anything. And I hope I'm not the only person who laments the fact that so many Lego kits these days have an end goal, and you just build it, and then you're done, and you're building a model. You can use these kits to build other things, of course, and that is where some of the most interesting exploration and play can come with, where you can say, look what I could build with this, and not just following the instructions. Right? But it's not gamified yet. You know, how do you reward that behavior? Because this will encourage people who are already interested in it. Right? But how do you encourage it? We'll get to that in a minute. Another example here is exploring different perspectives. It's not about the possibilities, but here's an eLearning example by James Ruffle that he posted on eLearning Heroes. This is just a Storyline 2 training, but it's quite pretty. I think I might be able to load this up for you guys here so you can see it. What he did was allowed you to look at a scene. And now the possibilities for this are a little broader than just what we have in this particular scenario, but you'll get the idea. Right? I've got a scene. You can add it around and show me, and I'm going to be looking at some parts to assess their risk. Right? So let me go ahead and get into that. What I can do is it loads. Loading. Maybe. All right, well, assuming it will load in a minute. What it allows you to do is kind of scroll around the environment at your own pace and investigate different elements of it and learn a bit about each of those different elements and see how they interact with each other. And then when you find something that's wrong, you can tie that information that you did learn back into that other element, the elements that you were exploring. You can tie them back in. Right, so unfortunately, that's not going to load for us too quickly, quickly enough anyway, so we'll move on. Right. But that's the idea. You can use the scroll wheel and you just kind of see different things. Right. So let me move on rather quickly. Here's a Kineo example of everything reacting. So this is a Barclays onboarding training. And what you get here is this environment which you're scrolling around and you're just kind of looking at all the cool pictures, but the neat part about it is that everything reacts to your mouse. And so people explore a little bit to see, hey, what happens when I mouse over this truck? What happens when I mouse over Charles Darwin and when I can click in there? And so you're exploring to see the cool animations and the cool content, even if it is, in the end, a menu. Okay. Another example, and this one is maybe a little non-obvious. This is an example we did with, here in New Zealand, the MFAT free trade agreement. This was part of their training. It was at the end of a module, they had to, about free trade agreements, they had to then formulate their own arguments about, hey, why would you pick a region in the world you'd want to do free trade with and then do it, write an argument, and you present this a little offline now because you're talking with your mentors, and sometimes that's what, I'm sure people who have developed training, you realize you need a blended approach, and sometimes it's not always best online. And if you don't have the tech for searching or sharing things online or comparing open-ended answers online, you take it offline. And then that was the case here, where we wanted them to explore content that we had given them and using the knowledge they've gotten from our different sources and apply it to arguments with free trade. Now, they could have made these arguments based on only some of the sources, but if they had explored all of it, they would have an even fuller picture. No right order to do it in, no right number of sources to use. And unfortunately, we're going to be running low on time, so I'm going to have to skip the QA part on this, but I'm sure you guys have some really good examples. And I just want to briefly talk about engagement, which ties right back to the beginning. The idea of sharing things keeps us engaged, right? So when you experiment, when you explore, and you gamify it a bit, you're engaging the learners in that process. And that discovery they have, I'm sure people have watched something really cool on the internet before, you've stumbled across it, and then you look up and around you and say, hey, did anyone else see that? Oh no, I'm just alone in a dark room with my laptop. You want to share these things. So you immediately go to social media and you share this cool video, this cool image that you found, and you feel better. Right? People want to share discoveries. They want to share progress and growth that they've had with each other. This is the root of every workout program that's attached to Fitbits in your wrist these days, where you share on social media your progress as you're working out. Right? Relating experiences to new ideas, modifying your own ideas and practice in light of this comparison. This is what reflection is. So it's not just about sharing. It's also about saying, I'm thinking about this and then sharing it. Right? So instead of just forwarding that cool article you read on the internet, you reflect on it and you talk about it with people. Right? That's what reflection allows us to engage with the content. It allows us to tie it back to our own belief structures, and that is important. If you've ever had an argument with somebody, with a debate, and they formulate an opinion, the second they formulate their opinion, you're not going to, it's going to be very difficult to change it because they've got all of this information they were drawing it on, and it's hard to convince them otherwise. This is it's a logical fallacy and a trap that people fall into, so we should use it. It's a natural human nature to use reflection, so we can harness it, right? So ask people open-ended questions after giving them content so they can reflect in directions you want them to. By asking these open-ended questions, the classic now, so what's, things like this. And we do this oftentimes. We can do it in e-learning modules by having scenarios, but the key here would be providing these scenarios not just to practice the content that as learned, but to hit it from a different perspective. If you're doing something simple like a client-customer scenario, flip it around. Have the person be the customer instead of the client, instead of the worker. Right? By providing from these different perspectives, it allows them to reevaluate the situation they are and reflect on the learning, apply it in a different way than they were before. Right? By reflection, hopefully they can get some more curiosity. Right? So some classic e-learning examples here of reflection. Forum discussion is a great way, at least for them to state their opinions. And hopefully with guided, you can do guided forum discussions. You can make them reflect on specific points. This is what mentors are good for. I'll also, with position papers and things, a lot of these are sharing, but a lot of them are offline. Now, for e-learning, of course, it gets a little more difficult to reflect because it's such an internal process. You need them to be able to do it externally and share that. So sharing is good. Quick hot tip, of course, a lot of us have seen this graph from 1885, the Ebbinghaus graph about forgetting things and staggering, the exposure and review to retain things over a longer period of time. If you do this with reflection as well and have them reflect on content, you can not just have them remember something, but also internalize it into their being so that you can change behaviors by having them reflect on content over weeks and continually reflect on what it means. And then you can even track how their opinions of something change over time as well. So if you incorporate that kind of thing into your long-term programs about periodic reflection over time, establish that personal connection with the material as well. Right, sharing is a form of play. I do want to keep that in mind. All of us came down to play, and we may not think of it as such, but people get a bit of amusement when they do this. They feel special. They feel happy. They get this people fun, you might say. And when I talk about these types of play, I want to revisit. Of course, this Genius beta here, we should also check out in terms of sharing, is a great example for sharing and getting that feeling of when people recognize you and upvote you, you're definitely going to feel that little bit of fun that comes with that gamification. Yeah, right there. No, I'm going to skip through it because I don't have time. Sharing makes you a community. This was an example that we did with Future in Tech, where new learners who were going into schools were going to be nervous about that. They were going into schools to share careers in science, and they were creating presentations to do so. And so having them form a community about best practice, that they learn things they learned about going to schools and writing their presentations and running mentorship programs for school kids, and allowing them to do this in structured environments was key to that program's success and key to how it was built as well. And mentors would make sure that everything was above board and make sure that it was all good stuff before they were sharing it. Sharing can be gamed. Here's a quick example as well. 7 Cups of Tea, which is simply a listening and supporting and spreading love website. You gamify giving advice to people, and you get all these different types of badges, and of course we can go back to the classic gamification approaches of leaderboards and badges, where you may be driven towards doing so. You know, some people are driven towards this type of success, but the goal, of course, is sharing and the types of sharing that people are doing. You know, notice that you're getting good reviews. It's not just the number of shares that you're doing, although it is related. Right? Scoop It, modern sharing these days, services like Scoop It allow your people to curate content. This is the information age. This is the digital future, the digital sea of content, allowing them to personalize things. Allows them to game it themselves. They're personalizing it. They're expressing themselves by being curators and showing it off. Right? Scoop It is a third-party service, but it doesn't mean you need to use it in your own organizations. There's a lot of ways to curate content. Right? And I am sorry we have to skip through the QA here a bit more. A final appeal to play. Just to quick summarize what we're doing. I want to reiterate that play and the idea of this is fundamental to the use of the conceptual age here, of the use of creativity. Right? We need to foster creativity in people so they can solve problems. It's related to these 4 motivation ramps, by giving people the freedom to experiment and to express their mastery of things and towards a particular purpose of their own selves sometimes. And we can motivate them to do things. Right? It's fun. Right? And the 4 keys of fun, which if any of you saw the gamification seminar that I ran, it's on the internet as well. I'm sure Georgia will share it with you later. The 4 keys to fun are a great starting model for thinking about this and for you guys to explore gamification as well in different ways than just a till game or a right-wrong answer or a test or something like that where you're trying to practice a particular skill. Right? It appeals to all types of people, and the idea is, of course, to appeal to as many people as possible. Allow them to have fun with the content so they can take ownership of that content. Right? So I'll leave you with that model to look up. I'll go back to that Nicole Lazaro, the ZO design. That's a good place to start for looking into fun and using fun as in other ways, you know, that are maybe not thought of as typically fun. They're just thought of as good learning, or to use fun in ways that are less strict games, like that. All right. And with that, I don't want to keep anybody longer than they have allotted. I know it's still a work day for many people. So I thank you for your time, and see if we have any last questions that you guys would like to pose or any comments before we wrap up this webinar.
Karen asked a little while ago, how effective is classic gamification with people who don't like games or are less confident with technology?
Right, you're really going to need a lot of buy-in, aren't you? If you try to do games with people who say, I don't like games, by making it look more like classic gamification, you will turn them off. That doesn't mean that people don't like fun, though. And by fun, I don't mean giggles and clowns. I mean motivation through socializing or sharing things, or motivation through exploration or experimentation. You just don't make it overt. Don't make it shiny like a game. Don't put those badges and leaderboards on there. Personally, I get turned off when I see that, and I love games. But if I see something that smacks of I'm putting leaderboards and badges on it to make you learn, I will react negatively. So don't is what I mean. If they're not good with technology, allow them to use the tools they already have. As we say, fun and play doesn't necessarily involve high-tech solutions. Our MFAT example was simply writing a paper in the end. But these were the kind of audience that liked writing papers. So knowing your audience as you do is a good first step. And then saying, well, what's fun well, fun is broad. You know, it's experimenting and exploration and these things. So you don't need to have a slot machine to make it fun. Right? So I know that's going to be vague, but purposely vague. But hopefully that's helpful. At least explore ideas of fun more than just overt games for fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Richard, for your presentation. That was really insightful, and we've been getting some really great feedback. Everyone really enjoyed it. And thank you to everyone who attended the webinar today. Apologies for it going a little bit over. If you have any further questions that you'd like to ask Richard, you can send him an email at richard.durham@kineo.co.nz, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer those for you. And to everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for attending. Take care.
Thank you. And yes, and thank you. To add on to that, thank you all for the people who shared their own knowledge as well. And she's right, I will be very happy to answer and discuss any questions and examples you have.
Perfect. See ya.
Thank you.